Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 208 of the show. And before we get started, I'm going to do a house cleaning quick because, well, you guys know I like to do it around here, and all that makes sense if we do it. So let's just get on with the house cleaning. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening. It does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly take time out of your day to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to constantly keep letting me know whether you like my stupid face or not, or you like my opinions or not. At the end of the day, I greatly appreciate you guys. Also, thank you to the Patreon backers for continuing to support the show. You guys are greatly appreciated. And at the same time, just thank you for everybody for interacting, not only with the polls, even though this week we didn't do a poll for this episode, because this episode is going to be a little bit shorter, but a lot more, I'm not going to say more focused, but there's a reason why I wanted to do this episode specifically. And we'll talk about that shortly. But again, thank you guys so much for your time. I really do appreciate that you guys allow me to have a piece of your time because, well, time is a very valuable thing. I understand it's not something that should be taken lightly. But speaking of time, because time is really of the essence here, I wanted to take this episode to do something a little bit special. Do something that I haven't been able to do before, but I'm able to do it now due to the fact that just where we're at, not only with the show, but also with how I've been very open and transparent about a lot of things, not only about my personal life, about my experiences, about things that I'm dealing with, things that, are happening as well. And I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit of that. And if you're new here, then, well, this episode is going to be very useful for that, because the whole point of this episode is to ask for a little bit of help. For me, since coming back to school in January, if you're well aware of my personal beliefs and everything, I go to church here in Lubbock, or, well, if you didn't know I was in Lubbock, then I'm in Lubbock. Well, tech isn't necessarily, you can't really find Texas Tech anywhere else besides this place because, it's Lubbock. It's a weird place. But it was during one of the sermons that something had really touched my heart a little bit. And they were talking about the spring break trips. They were talking, because normally every year they do spring break trips, they do their summer trips, and these are primarily, they designate them as mission trips, but someone broke it down for me a little bit better, or at least like provided a different perspective to think about them as like a short-term discipleship trip. Because really, like, the idea, if you're a Christian and that's what you believe, then in reality you're always supposed to be on mission. Like, it's not just like, oh, one trip you go on for like a year or a week or a month. It should be every day of your life. Primarily these trips that they do for spring break are more of in line of, yes, they're called mission trips, but they're a way to really focus and re-engage with your beliefs and your faith. And I've always ignored them. Just personally, being blunt, honest, and transparent, I've always ignored them. I always thought, that's cool, but not for me. I always thought it didn't make there wasn't a lot of logic and reasoning behind like me wanting to go. Like, it didn't make sense for me. But this time it was a little bit different. This time, when talking about the trips, something kind of changed. And I was like, well, let me fill out the application. Let me throw my hat out there. Why not? Like, let's see what happens. Grant, they probably might not pick me. Like, they have limited spacing. They primarily like to choose members in terms of the people who get to go. So I'm like, well, they might not pick me. Fast forward like a couple weeks later, I get a phone call, or I get, well, more or less email that leads into a phone call, and they want to talk to me about the trip, about my choices. Why did I want to go on these specific trips? Why did I choose them? And also just talk a little about my story, because I've always told people, to me, I have always believed, and I've always shared with people, that the best way to engage with people, the best way to understand people, the best way to really get to know somebody is by sharing stories. It's by really understanding where this person is coming from. You may not understand them perfectly. You may not be able to put yourselves in their shoes 100%, but the fact that you're being thoughtful, you're being intentional, you're engaging, you're sharing stories, you're making connections, you're really trying to make an effort to understand who they are and what they've seen, because everyone's perspective is unique, because everyone's been through different things. Everyone's seen things a lot differently, if we're just being honest here. And with me, when I was opening up about my story, I was honest. I was like, I grew up in a Christian home my whole life. I grew up in the church. Like, I was the stereotypical church kid, like doing Bible competitions, doing Bible drills as a kid, going to, Sunday classes, and doing well, like in terms of the Bible memory, memorizing the Bible and things like that. But I also realized there was a lot of stuff in me that was broken. I was very, how would you say, very stubborn. I always thought that it was either my way or the highway. I was always very angry. I was always very, I wouldn't say cold, but energetic also isn't necessarily the best term to use. Fast forward to when I was 11 and my aunt passed away. And then I started to realize that a lot of that neglect, that a lot of that built up depression really started to come to light. And then from there, I fell into a 4-year depression. And it only got worse when my grandmother passed away. Didn't help that my depression had gotten worse. My anxiety was at an all-time high. It didn't help that, just being honest, I was dealing with a lot of suicidal thoughts. I always kept asking questions like, why do people like me get to stay alive, but people like my aunt and my grandma don't get to be here anymore? I always kept asking God, like, why do, just being blunt, transparent about it, like, why do pieces of crap like me get to still be here? Someone that people just don't like, but people like my grandmother, people like my aunt that people genuinely loved and cared about, they don't get to be here anymore. And those were things that I had to wrestle with hard. Like, my mom and dad couldn't help me with that. My sister couldn't help me with that. It was literally just me and God at that point. And it wasn't until, like, when I was 15, when I was alone in my grandmother's room after she had passed away, and I just bawled my eyes out, just really asking God, like, why am I still here? Why am I still allowed to breathe air, given all the crap that I've done, given all the mistakes that I've made, given the fact that I just wasn't good enough to fulfill the standards that my family had placed, that I just wasn't up to par of where I should have been. And yet, when I was at my lowest point, something clicked in me. Something started to make sense. Fast forward to when I was 16 and I met one of my teachers in high school. Like, I was like, hey, I know this guy's a Christian. I know he goes to church. I just randomly was like, hey, can I talk to you about something that's on my mind? And that was the first time I had ever opened up to anybody about what was really on my mind. Like, really just laying it all out there. It was the first time I had ever done that. And just being transparent, it's probably the first time any of my family had ever done that. Because, just being real, my family has kind of been that way, where they never wanted to share how they feel about their problems. It was always, well, just suck it up and get over it. And yet for the first time, I did something different that nobody else had done. And I opened up to my teacher about what was on my mind. And he was like, I want you to look at these resources. Just look at them. You don't have to care about them. but just take a look at them and let me know what you think. And it was a couple sermon series from his church. One of them was A Few Good Men, and the other one was conflict resolution. And well, the first one was conflict resolution, and or the best way to put it is that conflict is a constant opportunity to grow. The second one was A Few Good Men. And those resources helped me out tremendously. They helped provide a lot of clarity. They helped provide a lot of answers and more practical methods of really applying this stuff that I had grew up learning. Fast forward a little bit later, they tell me, hey, why don't you go to this camp? Like, it's a camp in Colorado, bunch of people you've never met before a day in your life. You probably would have never associated with them ever on your own. We want you to go. I feel like there's something there that you need to learn that will really help bring everything together and finally give you the clarity that you've been looking for. And by the grace of God, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. It's a lot of money. And they tell me, hey, we shared your story with a couple people, and they decided we need to send this kid to camp. This kid screams there's something about him that he's going to learn here, and we need him to learn it. I've never forgotten that ever, and I never will. I will never forget the generosity that people did, because they believed that sending me somewhere for a week could change everything. Fast forward today, I'm not the same person that I was when I was 16. I'm 22. I'm 22 now. 6 years is a lot. 6 years of experience, of good experiences, bad experiences, and anything in between. And yet here we are with a new opportunity to do another trip. And for me, every time I do my little prayer walks where I just go on a walk for like an hour, and I always just kept telling God, I'm like, I've seen what you've been able to do in a week. What more could you do with another week? Because just being transparent and honest with you guys, for the past 3 years, I've noticed I've become a little bit more bitter. I've noticed that I become a little bit more cold. I've noticed that I become a little bit more, how would you say, not as warm as I normally am. Some may say it could be because of the breakup that it kind of broke me a little bit. Some could say, add on top of the stress of school, the stress of the whole situation with COVID, add on like the loss of my aunt. There's so many things that it could be. And yet, I'm given another golden opportunity to do another trip, except this time, well, yes, there will be learning involved. I think the better way to frame it is, this is going to lead to fixing this broken perspective that I have. Because I've always said, like, it's kind of ironic, I've gotten into photography. A camera and a lens basically are the perspective that you view the world whenever you're using a camera. Your lens is how you are viewing the situation and the world around you. And sometimes as people, our perspectives can get messed up. The lens that we're looking through life can get foggy, can get cracked, maybe be a little bit rose-colored sometimes. And these are things that we have to, in my personal opinion, we just have to let God have control of these situations, because when something is broken, who are you going to take it to? It's like, someone always uses this example for me. It's, say something goes wrong with your computer and you tried everything you possibly can to fix it and you can't fix it. Who are you going to send it to? Are you going to send it to the manufacturer? Or are you just going to keep trying to make it work even though you've clearly shown you can't make it work? When something is broken, the only person who can fix it is the one who originally made it. And for me, I do acknowledge that my perspective on life has become, well, yes, I have grown. Well, yes, I have learned many lessons that have helped not only me, but the people around me, the people that I've interacted with, the people that I am blessed, that I have an influence over their life. But I also notice that my perspective is a little bit more bitter. That lens that I'm looking through life may be cracked a bit. And it needs to get fixed. It needs a tune-up. And that's exactly why the thing I'm announcing is that from March 12th to the 19th, I'm going on a missions trip. Or a better way to put it is more of a short-term intensive discipleship training trip. Let's just call it a discipleship trip. For an entire week, I'll be working with a church in New York, in Queens, where we'll be working with the local community, engaging with them, really getting to know their stories, really being there to serve them in any way that we possibly can. And right now, what we're doing is essentially fundraising for it. Because let's be real, it's pretty pricey. But I know at the end of the day, I know it sounds weird, like, they do this whole stuff of like training of like, how do you fundraise and stuff like that? And I'm like, well, I don't think about it that way. I'm like, the trip will get paid for. What I'm really asking for is that if you are a believer, if you believe in the gospel, that you would just pray for me, that you would keep me in your prayers, that you would ask God to really just wrestle with me intensively during that week, to really help me to receive all that he has for me, not be so stubborn, and to finally let go of this illusion of control that I have. For me, I don't care if you donate or not. I really don't. Like, I know that kind of sounds bad, but what I mean is I don't just care about the monetary support, because that's not what's important to me. That's not the most important thing to me. What I care about the most is that you guys would pray to God and ask him to really just wrestle with me and win. I know that for me, this trip is going to be a blessing for my life, because 1 week was able to change my entire life when I was 16 years old. Imagine what this could do. That's really what I want you to think about, is the results speak for themselves. If that trip never happened when I was 16, this would never have happened. This whole interaction that we are having right now would have never happened. And things would look much differently. For me, I just ask that you guys would, just be with me. Think about me, keep me in your thoughts, keep me in your prayers, and really just, it's hard for me to imagine all of this. It's crazy to think, because I didn't even think I'd be in this situation, to think about doing this kind of trip. And yet here we are. At the end of the day, guys, I'm excited. It's definitely crazy, if I'm being honest with you, because this is definitely out of my comfort zone. But I also realize that stepping out of my comfort zone is the only way I'm going to grow. It's the only way. And I know right now what I need more than anything is, besides healing, I need to grow a little bit more. Because there are challenges that are up and coming that I want to be prepared for. Because, again, a lot has changed. I'm about to graduate. Like, I got my senior ring. I'm going to graduate soon. And I'm about to be in the real world, working a real job and dealing with adult things like taxes and health insurance. And probably trying to find a house. Or an apartment, because let's be real, the house market kind of sucks right now. But I just ask that you guys would be with me on this journey. I'm going to be taking a lot of photos. Like, I'm going to be doing a review about this thing pretty shortly. My Instax Mini Evo that I got. But I'm going to be taking a lot of photos. I'm going to be documenting what goes on this trip. And I'm going to share with you guys about what I've learned during that trip. I'm going to be leaving a link down below that if you want to go to the donate page and donate. If you want to donate $1, if you want to donate $100, whatever you feel is appropriate. If you don't want to donate and you just want to pray for me and think about me, at the end of the day, that is one of the best things you could do for me. But I wanted to take this time to really just pour out my heart and just talk to you guys about all of this, because it's a lot. It's scary on some levels. It's a place that I've never been before. I've never been to New York. Trying to make sure I don't get mugged. A lot of people have said that they're a little bit more mean up there. And knowing me, I'm kind of a nice guy. So I'm trying not to get mugged or killed, but we'll be fine. At the end of the day, I just thank you guys so much for your love, your support. It really does mean a lot to me. I hope that a lot of these conversations that I have, just talking about things that are on my mind, or just talking about things like mental health and things like this, that a lot of these real talks are helpful and encouraging to you guys. And I hope that me talking about my life experiences, sharing my story, can encourage and embolden some of you guys to be, maybe take a little bit more open steps, or I'd say maybe take your first steps into finding true healing and finding true peace with a lot of things you've been through. Again, guys, thank you guys so much for your time. Again, I'll be leaving a link to all this stuff down below. If you guys want to support or not, hey, that's perfectly fine. If you guys just want to follow this journey, I'm posting stuff on my social media, so obviously social media links will be down below. At the end of the day, thank you guys so much for everything. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I know this isn't your normal episode. It's more of some people could say it's more of a promo for the trip, but it's much more than that. I thank you guys so much for your love. I thank you guys so much for your support. Please continue to keep me in your thoughts and prayers, guys. And as always, don't do anything dumb. Please continue to be kind and respectful of those around you. Please continue to be courteous, because the world is still a weird place, guys. And things would look a lot better if we were just a little bit more kind, caring, maybe a little bit more empathetic and understanding of other people and their perspective, because the world is a big place. And the reality is our definition of the world is not the actual definition of the world. The world is a much bigger place. At the end of the day, guys, thank you guys so much for everything. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful week and weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Doing a more normal episode, but be safe, y'all. I love you guys to death. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.